I'm taking on the challenge of ranking and analyzing some of the top fantasy football running backs for this coming season. All right, guys, as we all know, fantasy football season is fast approaching, and it's time to do some breakdowns and get you guys ready for your fantasy football drafts and get you up to speed on all the things going on in the NFL and with fantasy football. Welcome back to Vegas Guys Locker Room, guys. My name is Jay. I'm always your host, and we're starting our fantasy football breakdowns. Get ready for the season. I know I am thrilled about this upcoming season. I love fantasy football season. It is great. There's a whole reason we kind of started this podcast and show, just because you have so much fun with it. So before we get started, I want you guys to comment below. What do you think are the top 3 value running backs going into in the drafts right now compared to their ADP? Give me your top 3 value draft picks for running back ones. So today, listen, we're going to break down some value picks. We're going to look at we're going to look at the top 5 running backs that I have personally going into my analysis that I really like in this upcoming season. And we'll also break down the one guy I think may be a bust. So first, let's start off with number 5. I really, really like James Cook this coming up season. I like the way he finished the last portion of last year. In fact, he was top 12 in 4 of the last 7 games of the season. I like those odds. I like the way Buffalo's offense has kind of worked around him ever since they made the switch from Ken Dorsey. Give me James Cook. James Cook looked explosive. He's still young. I think with the lack of weapons on the outside, I think you can really see a lot of James Cook being involved in this Buffalo offense going forward. Now, I know the touchdowns, everybody's concerned. He only had 2 last year, but that won't always be the case. It's the same reason as you see somebody with, 15 touchdowns. Probably not going to happen on a yearly basis. I believe it works the other way as well. I don't think 2 is going to be where he ends up with. I think he'll have a lot more touchdown productivity. And just on that alone, I think catapults him into that number 5 spot. His catching ability to hit the holes. I really, really like James Cook. He's my number 5 running back going into this fantasy year. Number 4, I've been tossing up this one. This one I've been back and forth on. But I'm going to go with Bijan Robinson here. I'm going to move Bijan Robinson to my number 4 spot. I think Bijan is a great running back. Problem is we haven't seen a whole lot from him coming from that Arthur Smith offense that really didn't showcase his talent. Everybody had high hopes for him. I know he was going in the top 5 drafts last season because everybody expected Atlanta to really get on this kid and really move forward with him. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. But now in a new regime, I think Bijan Robinson will finally get his chance to really showcase his skills, both running and catching the football. Even though he was in that tough spot there in Atlanta, he had 10 top 20 finishes and 6 were in the top 10. So going forward, I think he can improve on that. And I think he is a valuable pick coming up in this draft. I think he's still going to go high. He's just young enough. And I think he helps the Atlanta offense tremendously. I don't think it's a 2-man battle as it was last year. I think he's going to get more 70% of the carries in the workload. I really like to see what Bijan Robinson is going to do this season. I really like him. He is my number 4 running back going into the fantasy year. Now, before we get into the top 3, we're going to break down some of the value picks that I like. There's 4 guys that I've been looking at that are going late in drafts that I really think if you kind of miss out on some of these top tier guys, maybe you can snag up some of these guys later at value. Not necessarily meaning they're going to be huge home run picks, but at the value and the draft capital you're using on them, I think they're going to be huge for your team. Number 1 is going to be Gus Edwards. The Gus bus, going down to the LA Chargers. You know what Jim Harbaugh wants to do. Listen, I know that everybody believes that could be a running back by committee. I think Gus Edwards is going to be the guy that gets the valuable touches inside the red zone. The Gus bus gets a high touchdown total this coming up here. I think he's going too late in drafts, and that is my value pick. Now, I also like Zamir White. Zamir White, I simply like just on volume alone. I don't think anybody knows what to make of this Las Vegas Raiders offense and what they're going to look like. No Josh Jacobs. They're kind of iffy on who the quarterback's going to be. Looks like it's going to be a competition there. Gardner Minshew and probably O'Connell, and seeing what they got alone. I think Zamir White carries the load. I think you're going to see a lot of Zamir White now. It may not be workhorse numbers, but I think you'll get anywhere from 65 to 70% of the volume going through Zamir White in that offense and that running game. Listen, he played well last year. So look at Zamir White simply on just volume. I think he's a value pick. He's going really late in drafts. If you're looking for a running back, maybe you missed out on some of the guys. You're looking for a second running back going in. Zamir White could be your guy. Another one is Zach Moss. Playing in Cincinnati, no more Joe Mixon. I know Brown is there, and they really like that kid. But I think Zach Moss had a heck of a year last year with the Indianapolis Colts. He showcased his ability to catch the ball and run the ball. He fits in nicely there. He's kind of a younger version of Joe Mixon. I could really see him doing well in that offense. Remember, Joe Mixon finished at pretty much in the top 10, I believe number 5. Going in to that offense, Zach Moss could have a good year. You could see him in the top 15 easily, just on his ability and the way that offense operates. Another guy I'm not sleeping on, and I think it could be a nice value pickup for you. Looking at Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know Najee a few years ago, man, the sky was the limit for him. He loved everything that you saw out of Najee. But now I believe you got Arthur Smith there. You still have Jalen Warren. I believe it's still going to be a 2 running back system. But I think you're going to get good value of what Najee Harris is still able to bring to the table. And he's going very late in drafts. So that's another value pick at running back that I'm really staring at right now. So those are the 4 guys I really like that are going late in drafts that you may want to keep an eye on going into yours. Now, let's get to number 3 on my list, and that is Mr. Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibby looked amazing last year at times. He played really well against poorer defenses, yes. Some of the upscale defenses, he did struggle. But I think with another year under his belt, I think his workload increases. I like his speed. I like the way they use him in the passing game. That offense is explosive. That could be a great spell for our boy Gibby. I know Detroit's hungry. David Montgomery is getting a little bit older. He's at that age where things tend to fall off. Is he still a solid running back? Absolutely. But look at Jahmyr Gibbs to really shine this year. I think he's going to be a huge, huge running back. If you can pick him up, I'm trying to get as much Gibby as I can get and go and get yourself some Jahmyr Gibbs. He is an amazing talent, and he's electrifying. He's got huge upside and a very, very high floor. That's exactly what you want when you're drafting an RB1. So if you got a chance, go get yourself some Gibby. At number 2, no shocker here, it's got to be Breece Hall. Breece Hall in that New York Jets offense. Listen, you're getting Aaron Rodgers back. I'm sure they're going to throw the ball a lot more. But Aaron Rodgers loves to throw the running back. He proved it in Green Bay with Aaron Jones. I think he does the same thing here with Breece Hall. Breece Hall is an electrifying player who can break one at any point of the game. I really like his production. Even with a bad offense last year and everybody keying in on Breece Hall, he was still able to put up great numbers and was fantastic for fantasy football. Love the way he plays. I think Breece Hall really shines this year. Of course, it's coming up this is his 3rd year. Contracts are coming up soon. He's going to want to start putting up some numbers. Look for Breece Hall to really have a great year. If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, could have a huge, huge year. Now, before we get to number 1, I'm going to look at the bust pick that I have for this year. The guy that I could potentially be a big bust that's going very early in drafts is Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers. I know everybody was shocked. They love that offense. They thought, wow, what a huge signing by Green Bay. But remember, this guy led the league in rushing a couple years back, had a very poor season last year. But even before the time he was a league leading rusher, I think everybody had given up on him on fantasy football in general. I know nobody was looking at grabbing some Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs really never lived up to any of that big hype when he came out of Alabama and was drafted by the Raiders. Is he just getting back to what we already saw prior to him leading the league in rushing? That is the fear that I have for Josh Jacobs, and why I believe I think what we saw out of him last year is kind of the same Josh Jacobs we're going to get this year. So look at Josh Jacobs and be tentative if you're drafting him as your RB1. I tend to look elsewhere at that point. Not really looking to get any stock in Josh Jacobs. Now, I could be wrong, and he could have an electrifying year, but that is my bust pick for this upcoming season. Now, of course, the number one guy, everyone that you love, you got to have run CMC. Christian McCaffrey, yes, he's getting up there in age, and the fall off is coming soon. Could it be this year? I don't think so. I think it's hungry. After that Super Bowl loss, I think the Niners are coming back with a vengeance. Who knows what happens with Brandon Ayuk, but that offense and that team knows the window is closing on these guys. People are going to want to get paid. You can only be so good for so long before you kind of have to hit the reset button. The Niners are getting on that brink. Run CMC's got at least a couple more years in him, I believe, of high elite football. Now, can he finish as the RB1 again? Can he finish in the top 3 of running backs in fantasy? I believe he can this year, but the fall off, do remember if you're playing in a fantasy league, the fall off will come sooner than later. If somebody's willing to give you a haul of players and some young talent and draft picks, and maybe the rest of your team is kind of on the cusp of mediocrity, might be something you want to look at. Maybe get retool that team for full of young players. But this year in redrafts, I'm definitely wanting to grab me some run CMC as much as I can possibly get. You know he's going early in draft. Even in 2 quarterback leagues, I believe his ADP is somewhere number 2, even in 2 QB leagues. Such a great pick. I think CMC has a hell of a year again just because of the way they utilize him. Well, guys, just to refresh, number 5, we had James Cook. Number 4, we had Bijan Robinson. Number 3, Jahmyr Gibbs. Number 2, Breece Hall. And, of course, the number 1 guy in fantasy running backs is going to be Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. Remember, don't forget about those value picks. Make sure, if you're looking late in drafts, Gus Edwards, Zamir White, Najee Harris, and Zach Moss, all going in those later rounds, you might want to keep an eye on those guys to see where you get them and not miss out on some great value picks there later in your draft. All right, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and check out all our other sports content for your enjoyment. Joining me next time, we're going to be breaking down wide receivers, looking at the value picks, possible bust, and our top 5 guys. Thanks for joining the show this week, guys. I'm going to see you guys in the next one.